So I've just been playing the new demo of Perfect Tide Station to Station, and that's obviously the sequel to Perfect Tides, which is obviously the point and click adventure game that came out in 2022, I believe. And
Mhm.
joining me now is its creator, Meredith Gran, to tell us much more about this game. Very excited to hear more about it because I've been enjoying playing it. Meredith, thank you for joining me.
Sure. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
I guess I've been, I played Perfect Tides. I've been playing this demo, but I suppose for people who maybe don't know about that world and about Mara, its protagonist, give us a little sort of intro into that.
So in the first game, you start as this character Mara, who's a 15-year-old girl, and she's living in the year 2000. So the way that she kind of interfaces with the internet is completely different from how a teenager might today. It's pretty unique to the time. This was, the first generation of teenagers using the internet, and maybe the only generation of teenagers using the internet as like an alternative to interacting in real life. Like those two things are so closely tied now. But in Mara's time period, it was possible to sort of escape into the internet. And as a 15-year-old who is interested in writing and has trouble relating to other people at school, she is particularly interested in online communities. And in addition to the fact that she's on the internet, she's also sort of isolated on this tourist island she lives on called Perfect Tides, which is a vibrant tourist community in the summer and a very, very quiet, isolated place in the winter. So there's not much going on when you start as Mara. And as the game progresses, more things in her life begin to open up, both online and in the real world. And the two end up interacting with each other quite a bit. Um, so you get a year of her life in Perfect Tides, and then in this new game, we've jumped a couple of years. She's now 18, and you're going to get another year of her life. So now she's in college. She doesn't live on the island anymore, and she spends most of her time in the city, going to school and working in this library. So we are getting a slightly more grown up and a version of Mara that is now facing an all new set of obstacles.
I had a great question for Matt, actually, who wanted to know, did you have plans to follow Mara post Perfect Tides, the original, or did it just kind of naturally develop after the first game finished?
No, I did not have any plans to make another game. When the game released, I actually went on vacation that week, and I was like, "That's it for working for a while." I've been working on this game for 4.5 years.
Yeah.
In During that time, I had a baby, and I just didn't have any rest. So I finished this game, and that was the first time that I realize the sort of feedback a person gets when they complete a video game, which was coming from comics, something I had never experienced before. I had experienced people being like, I read this and I liked what I read. I connected with what I read. When people play a video game, they are like interfacing so directly
Yeah.
with your own thoughts. And I I think like a sort of madness took over me that week, and I immediately began writing the second game. I just had to do more of this, and the ideas came to me very quickly. And that was almost 2 years ago, and uh, all of the ideas that I wrote in that period of madness, those few days right after the first game released, are still the story of this game
Okay.
that I'm working on. So I harnessed that sickness, and I decided to make more games in that moment.
Were you just kind of struck by people's reaction to it, or what kind of encouraged you to do that?
Well, I think it was the first time I was really allowing myself to think about whether I had more to say with this character,
Sure. Yeah.
and I wasn't really able to think about that until that moment. Like kind of the way I describe Mara's thoughts as monogamous, I sort of feel that way about my creative work. That I can't really think about anything else while I'm working on it. So I was lasering in on
Yeah.
that game until it was no longer my problem. I mean, you release a game, it's never not your problem. But the story aspect of it was no longer my problem, and then I felt like I could really focus on brand new ideas, and it seemed very right to me in that moment that I would continue Mara's story, because these were things that I had never actually written about, these years in college that a lot of people get to adulthood and they would like to distance themselves from
Yeah.
that very quickly. And when I was working in comics, when I was making Octopus Pie, I was making a comic about people in their early 20s who kind of aged all the way to 30. So I had never written about this time period before, this 18 to 19 period. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized there are things that are very unique to that time period that I didn't want to remember, but
Mm.
now I think I'm going to, because there's a lot to say there.
Does that does that become like a bit of a, well, not quite therapy, but for you, like having to like go back to these kind of feelings and thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. It is therapy for me. And when I release it, it's almost a collective therapy
Yeah.
where I get to be like, this happened to me. What do you think?
Don't judge me.
And and a lot of people are like, "It didn't happen to you, it happened to me."
Yeah.
And that's the conversation that happens after these games come out. So it is really, there is a type of catharsis that I've never experienced before through the release of these games.
I think I had a question. I'm trying to find it now, but I'll see if I can remember it. I think we had a question which was quite interesting about how you kind of research this, and particularly kind of the cultural aspects, but just being a teenager, and how do you go about doing that?
Well, I went straight to the source, which
Yeah.
was my experience of being one. I'm not talking to teenagers for my
No.
information. I don't imagine they
That's
would be able to help me very much.
imagine if that's
Um,
came out. That's what you would. I mean.
No, no. I mean, it's fair, because
Yeah.
like if I asked you right now to come up with a year of stories about your life when you were 18, it probably, like, you would probably have a very abbreviated
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I started to think about it, that was the case for me too. And opening up these memories is really a process that takes a long time. And even though I did come up with that story very quickly, the individual and specific experiences that I remember as I write are unfolding very slowly. So I'm still writing right now, and I'm still remembering things that I didn't remember 2 years ago when I started writing. So it's like the more I live in this, the more I suppose it's kind of like method acting, where I kind of have to think like an 18-year-old for a while and live in those memories of myself, and until they start to be awakened again and I start to form a new perspective on them.
That was actually a message. Sorry, I should have remembered. It's from Casey Adventure in the chat, who did add that Perfect Ties 1 had the best written teenagers they knew. So I think that's quite.
Oh, thank you.
And I
That's
agree.
that's lovely. That's lovely. I get kind of frustrated with the way teenagers are written, because I always feel like they're sort of idealized a little bit, and their feelings of worthlessness are never as intense as it felt for me. And I feel like a lot of the time they're not done the justice that they deserve in writing.
I was interested as well, I guess, for the first one, but I mean, it makes more sense with the second why you chose that year. But what made you decide to set it in 2000, the first game?
I think, we're all sort of coming up on the period of collective nostalgia
Yeah.
for the 2000s, and I'm not immune from it either. But when I think of these things, I don't just think of them in terms of like, remember that? Like,
Yeah.
I really look for the there I try to put everything in context. When I experience something, who was I, and what was going on in the world? And that, to me, I think, is interesting to collect, as opposed to just what was on TV,
Yeah.
because that's not life. So when I talk about the things, the touchstones of those years, I'm really talking about them in context of the life that I was living then.
And because I even just playing this demo, I started looking up like when did I first get like my Nokia 3310, and I was trying to remember like when would that have come out in the UK and trying to think about those kind of things. So it
Mhm.
definitely made me I think sort of think back at that time and like what was going on. I mean, talking about this the game which is obviously set in 2003, Mara's now 18. She's a little bit more grown up, but I think it's fair to say still a bit insecure about things.
She has much to learn,
Yeah.
yes. She's just become free, really.
Yeah.
Like when she was 15, 16, she was still kind of under the watchful eye of her mother and her brother, and she was only wandering the island, not really going farther than that in school. And the internet was like a place to explore further than that, but it was all very limited.
Yeah.
She didn't even get to decide if she had the internet or not. So, here she is free to leave home and go off into the city and crash at her friend's house and explore all these ideas in school. But it's the first time she's doing that. So, her ability to do that is, there's no manual for these things.
Yeah.
She's learning how to conduct herself in social situations that she's never been in before, and she's navigating this relationship that she's in for the first time.
Yes.
And there's just all these things that it's incredible progress for her that she's experiencing all of this, but she's totally new at it. And uh, she may think experiencing those things makes her an expert on those topics, but far from it. I mean, we will see how she how she actually handles these things.
Because it's interesting, obviously there's plenty of adventure games that have sequels and they have the same protagonist, but this is particularly interesting, I think, because although she's only aged by 2 years, the gap between 16 and 18 is a pretty big one. So I'm interested to know, like, in terms of writing that, we quite aware of that and how she would have changed from the first game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's embarrassed by who she was,
Yeah.
and I have a few opportunities in this demo to show that. I don't want to give anything away about the story, but there are a few moments where Mara is thinking about something that she did when she was a little bit younger, when she was like 2, 3 years
Yeah,
younger,
yeah.
and is very embarrassed by it, and already trying to distance herself from that, because that's what you have to do, right? Like you can't become an adult if you're going to like live in those past years. So she has to reject all of that. She has to reject her writing. She has to reject the kind of person she was, and say, no, no, no. Now I am who I'm going to be. I was not then a complete person.
You're talking about kind of like topics and things like that, and obviously we see that pop up in the demo and get introduced this topic system. I guess talk us a bit through that mechanic and why you wanted to do it that way.
Well, in the first game, you're kind of walking around collecting crap off the ground.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like something you would do in a Sierra game, but it's also something you would do as a kid with no direction. You just be like, I got no money, I got no freedom. I'm just gonna walk around and like, what's this? Maybe I can use this. And that's sort of the inventory that you keep when you're a kid. But for Mara in college, she's collecting knowledge,
Yeah.
and that's her inventory in this game, and her social capital that she can play with. She can ask people about. She can ask them about all these different topics that she's learning about. She can talk to them about their peers or about other adults, and sort of position herself within her social world. And to me, those are really the inventory that you take in college. You don't really walk away with much materially. You walk away with those experiences. So to me, this is the best way mechanically to sort of quantify those ideas.
Does that make making it quite difficult though? Because you've got to keep adding, obviously there's all different topics and then there's all these different interactions with each person about the topics. That must be quite a lot of extra work.
Yes, I have written quite a few at this point. At certain points, there are going to be like topics that start to consolidate with one
Okay.
another. The more she learns about them, the more potential there is for them to change. So, the ideas don't always accumulate. Sometimes they evolve. And, ultimately, like by the end of this game, when you've got your full inventory, there will be quite a few topics that you can talk about with quite a few people. But yeah, I've prepared myself for that.
I mean, the best, they're all very well written and interesting to explore. And that's what I found with Perfect Tides as well. It's just, you want to speak to these characters and learn more about them because, they give you so much. We also heard about a little bit about the writing system and the kind of assignment system in the
Mhm.
demo as well. So, I mean, talk to us a bit about that and how that's going to work.
Yeah, so I kind of regret that there's only one assignment available in the demo, and it's one that the game helps you through.
Sure.
But that's how it has to be. You can only write one assignment per day. So you'll get all manner of assignments, not just school assignments, but other things that you might need to use your writing brain to write.
Hmm.
So Mara will navigate many aspects of her life, including school, through this writing mechanic. And I think that gives me a lot of opportunities to allow the player to make choices that have more dimensions than just sort of like the multiple choice, like what'll I
Yeah.
say kind of thing. So yeah, I really just want to be able to give people more variety in how they can conduct themselves, and you really do have a lot of choices with that when you get the full scale of assignments from it.
Would you? I mean, it's up to you because you might not want to kind of spoil too much. But would you be able to give like an example of another one, maybe, just so we can kind of know how it would work outside of the sort of demo? But if you don't want to, that's fine.
Yeah, let's see if I can give one away that when I mean, beyond school, Mara is looking for other opportunities. So
Yeah.
other opportunities to like show off her skills will arise in the game. And there, she can really prove herself or she can totally
Okay.
fail to do so. And that's really going to depend on the player.
I think sort of part of the charm of Perfect Tides was it felt very authentically of its time. We've kind of been discussing that within the messages as well in chat, and kind of this rise of obviously the global internet. Um, how do you choose though what to put in it, and what kind of things can we expect to see for the sequel as well, sort of culturally?
Mm. Um, I don't know. I mean, that's sort of an ongoing conversation I
Yeah.
have with myself. And when you write a demo, you got to commit to a few topics.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm still in the process of figuring all of that out. I have I work on different aspects of the story. Sometimes I'm working on just a linear story to get it the way I want it, and sometimes I'm working on just the writing mechanic. And I feel like both of those need to kind of come up together because the outcome of the story is going to influence what topics are end up being relevant tomorrow. So I've already worked out quite a bit of that. In fact, the writing is more complete, I would say, than any other part of the game at this point. But the two things, the writing mechanic and the story rely very heavily on one another.
And is there a case, it kind of hinted at this, but I wasn't quite sure how this would work with the topics. Will they, it kind of mentioned about certain topics would be more suited to certain characters. Is that something that's going to develop as well, potentially?
Yeah, I mean, depending on, you can go in a few different directions with each piece,
Yeah.
and choosing like relevant topics is generally like the safe choice,
Yeah.
and choosing topics that perhaps you've developed a little bit more is like potentially be better than safe or worse than safe. You
Yeah.
don't know. So you can take a risk and sort of base your decision around the knowledge you've collected and what you think is going to spice up your ideas a little bit.
It's just going to be a lot, so much choice. I'm really fascinated to see all the different ways you can play this. Gets Elias in the chat says, "Do you feel this game is more narrative driven compared to the first game?"
Well, there's certainly more narrative. This
Yeah.
game is very long. This is just day one, and there's going to be 16 days in the
Ooh.
entire game. So this is definitely longer than the first game. I don't know if it's twice as long, but it
Wow.
kind of
Okay.
feels like maybe it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know that it's more narrative driven because this mechanic didn't even exist in the first
No.
game.
No.
You know, it really is going to be up to the player how important the mechanic is. You know, you can take it or leave it, but there's going to be more narrative and more gameplay. So
That's
it's hard to say what the ratios are just yet.
yeah. I guess I suppose in a sense it's really just more kind of branches of that narrative, isn't there? You know, there's obviously the first one is was very narrative driven as well, but it was a different kind.
Hmm.
Danger Mouse in the chat makes a good point, and I was going to bring this up as well, about the art style, which is something that a lot of people loved about the first game, and I'm sure are going to love about this one as well. Just interested to know, I guess, about the process of that. That was, I believe, with the artist Soren Hughes. Is that right?
Hmm. Yeah, so Soren creates the environments for the game,
Right.
and they did the backgrounds for the first game too. So this has been a wonderful collaboration, and especially so because Soren attended the same university that I did.
Oh,
So
really?
uh, yeah, so our memories are somewhat spaced apart, but actually we share quite a bit of it. And Soren sort of remembers this world in a similar way that I do, but with their own memories. So we really get to like Soren gets to build on the ideas that I've put forth, and I'm just I love to be surprised by what they come up with. So Soren does the background art, and then the characters are done by me. And at any given time, I have a couple people who are helping me to do the animations and the special effects and the NPCs. Um, and then where was I going with this train of thought about the art style? Yeah, I mean, the way the characters are designed is sort of consistent with the way I've kind of always designed characters. They resemble the comic, and I find that people who recognize my work from the comics tend to notice that about the games.
I'm guessing because it definitely it really fits in. I feel like with the narrative and the setting and the time that the art style, and I'm guessing that was sort of meant because it just seems to really work well together. And I don't know if that's just because of your comic style in general, or if you were thinking of keeping it in that sort of nostalgic feel.
I mean, I think, you kind of draw like the era you come up in, and this is when I was sort of solidifying my visual style. So, like these were years where, like Mara, I was kind of like destroying the previous versions of myself
Yeah.
and deciding like here and now this is who I am and this is how I draw. So, I think that would definitely be reflected in the art style. People tend to recognize Nicktoons,
Yeah.
anime, Scott Pilgrim,
Yep.
the real visual touchstones of the time have definitely influenced what I do.
We've got a few messages in the chat as well. The Deluxe Tux says, "What message or feelings do you hope players will take away from the game?"
Well, I mean, what sort like it's hard to say what a unified
Yeah.
message would be without spoiling the themes that I'm drawing from most strongly. But I always look to write this character with a certain amount of both scrutiny and forgiveness. I try not to judge her for the things that are perhaps the foolish choices she makes that are perhaps just due to her age and her lack of experience. And at the same time, she's not completely innocent of what she does. And there are certain things that she really had better take some lesson away from. So I don't know. I really just tried to I try to emphasize forgiveness with these characters.
And Matt in the chat has a question. Why did you decide to create Perfect Tides as a game instead of a comic?
Hmm. Um, I mean, I don't know if I knew it would work from the beginning.
What
I
was
just
your sort of background? Were you creating things, games and things like that, or did you have this idea and decide it would work better as a game, or what was your kind of
So I was drawing Octopus Pie for
yeah
10 years, and then
comic? Yeah,
I decided to end the comic and have a baby, and that meant that I was ready for something completely different. And it was the first chance I'd had in my adult life really to ask myself, what would I do if I had the choice of, whatever I could possibly do. Time's ticking before I have a fraction of the time that I have right now. So why don't I think about this? And I picked up Adventure Game Studio, which is open source for the last like 20 years. It's been available and just waiting for me to create something in it. And I played around with it a little bit, and I found that it was pretty easy. And I didn't have any coding experience, but I thought that I could figure it out if I tried. And the more I messed with it, the more it really became fun and seemed intuitive to me. Um, so I had a few different ideas when I started, but I think it's sort of like, this is weird, but it sort of formed around my asking myself, what is the most like fun, free, and power fantasy that I have in my mind? Because when I think about video games, I think about like, who do I want to play as? What would feel amazing to me? What would be the game that I would make if I had the chance to make it? And the first thing I thought of was, endless exploration of an island, of like a tropical island. And I had this image in my craw of a cartoon that I have not seen since I was a kid. It was called Serendipity, the Pink Dinosaur. And it was based on like a series of children's books, and they made an anime. It was like an American book, but they made an anime out of it. It's so weird. I don't think I've ever actually brought this up before. I don't know if anyone's ever seen this, but Serendipity. It's just like a cartoon about an island with a pink dinosaur is a sea monster who swims in the ocean, and there's all kinds of creatures on the island, and pirates, and good guys and bad guys. And caught up in it is this little kid who gender is sort of unrecognizable, but he just kind of runs around the island and helps serendipity and saves the creatures and does good and swims and ventures forth on this island. And there was like something about this kid in particular that I really latched onto as like just sort of this lost child
Hmm.
without any obligations, without really any family to speak of, who was just out in the open exploring the world. And I think that was sort of the thing I started with. And I had a few different drafts of stories that I could tell with a character like this. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, what part of myself do I see in this? And the more I rewrote this and thought about it, the more it became something that was a little bit more truthful and less fantastical. And ultimately, when I started to get excited about making the game, was when I started to find the reality in it. And at that point, sort of the all of the supernatural elements faded away for what I saw as an opportunity to tell a real story about being a teenager. But many of those elements, the island and the natural beauty and the loneliness of the child, stayed intact.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, I can see that. I'll have to check out that that book. Get Sally's in the chat says, since Perfect Tides is based on certain time period of the city, do you feel nostalgic about how the city changed? And do the characters in the game talk about or notice the changes?
Yeah, well, one of Mara's first crises that she's going through is that her teacher has just informed her that the city used to be cool and now it's not
Yeah.
cool anymore. And she's kind of caught up in the disagreement between Daniel, her best friend, and this teacher that she admires so much. And she's not sure yet. She's not sure if she's even in a place where there are any great experiences to have. And I think that's kind of how we all feel in a city, because uh, none of us get to really have it. It doesn't belong to any of us, it's too big. And that's part of what's so fascinating about it, is that it's not ours. And of course, having been in the city around the time Mara was in the city, I now look back and I'm like, oh man, all this stuff changed. But when I was there, I didn't understand that. I was not living in the present moment. I
Yeah.
was trying to hold on to some moment from the past. So I think I think that's that's something I think about a lot as I'm writing this. I'm definitely writing with a fondness and maybe a disgust for some of the things that used to exist back then. But also I have the perspective now to know that these things do change and that at any given time we're living in the old city and the way things used to be.
Yeah, that's a heavy one. I'll have to think about that. Obviously talking about making games and making adventure games. Are you a fan of adventure games yourself? Are there any you've been playing recently, or kind of ones that you hold very dear? Maybe more retro style ones as well.
Yes, well, for recent games, I've been playing, there's a new Goblins game. I don't know if you're
Yes.
familiar with that series,
Yeah.
but,
I haven't
I,
played it, but yeah, I saw it's
yeah,
out. Yeah.
I've been playing it with my son, which is an incredible, feeling because Goblins is one of those games. I found Goblins 2 in the '90s when I was, like, a kid at Caldor with my mom. It's like this big box store that doesn't exist anymore, and, I bought it from the bargain bin, and it was, a completely blind discovery that I then fell in love with, and, it's so wonderful that the developer is still making these games. He's actually making them with AGS too, which really does my heart well. But my ultimate is, would either have to be like the King's Quest series
Sure.
or Laura Bow, and
Yeah.
particularly the second Laura Bow game, which I feel like I'm sort of drawing ideas from for this game, where you do interview people about
That's
people and
true, actually.
topics
Yeah.
and expand your knowledge of those things. You don't expand your knowledge within the game, but you do expand your own knowledge that you then use to like win the game if you're going to win. And yeah, the that game really hit me at the right time. Also a bargain bin game that I found, years after it had been made and just had such a profound impact on me. So I'm definitely thinking about those games when I'm making this one.
It's funny you say that because I always tell this story on stream how one of my favorite games is Grim Fandango. And I just found that at a Costco when I was about 10 or something. And I just liked it because it had a skeleton on the cover with a gun. And I thought that was really cool. And then I
Sure.
bought it and I was like, oh, this is actually a really good game as well. But yeah.
Yeah. It's really like falling in love where you just don't expect
Yeah.
anything of it. Like you go in completely blind and it surprises you in so many wonderful ways.
I'll wrap up now. So if anyone's got any more quick, brief questions, but a question that you'll probably hate. I know I've already asked you this, but when do you think this might be out?
Oh, I wish it was gonna be this year, but
Yeah,
it's not. It's just not possible, but that's why I wanted this demo to come out when it's out,
yeah.
because I wanted to give people a little taste and remind them that I'm working every day on this game. Life's busy. I get about 4 hours a day to actually focus on this game. And that's it's not nearly enough, but I will make it enough in time. And it is coming along very well. I am currently writing the scenes of the fourth act
Okay,
and chipping away at the assets a little while I'm at it. So we're looking at least a year,
cool.
um, perhaps a bit more, but 2025 is definitely my goal.
A question we like to just throw out there to people I talk to. Meredith, what's your favorite chocolate bar?
My favorite chocolate bar. Well, let me think. I've been vegan for 10 years now,
Sure.
and, that means that a lot of my favorite chocolate bars are just memories to me now. My one exception that I make once a year is that I eat a Cadbury cream egg, and I
Oh.
had mine a few days ago for the
It's
year.
coming up to the time. It's getting up to that time.
But, my dream would be for Cadbury to make one of those for me so I could eat them all year long. That would be
Listen, I'm in the UK. I'll get right on it, Meredith. I'll tell them.
please,
I'll
please tell them there are lots of non-dairy milks that make great chocolates, I promise.
I'll let them know. I'll let them know. Well, thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Meredith, for having a chat with us. Genuinely appreciate it. And honestly, take that time. We're really looking forward to the sequel, Station to Station. But the demo's looking great. Take all the time you need because we know it's going to be great. And yeah, just really looking forward to it.
Oh, thank you so much, Laura.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I'll put all the links and everything for the demo, because as we've been saying, it's out now. If you want to play it, it's on Steam. Wishlist it, and get playing it, everybody.
Woohoo!
Right,
Yes.
good stuff.
Let me know
Right,
what you
thank you so
think.
much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.